In 2021, a small nonprofit group called Revive Alaska Community Services used this large barn in South Anchorage as a makeshift food pantry. In April, part of the roof caved in due to the weight of the snow.
So you can donate.
That's when the group's president, Prince Wonkadu, publicly pleaded for funds to help make repairs.
Any donation would help. We are a full 501c3 organization, tax exempt. We're looking for grants and for funding to rebuild the barn.
A week later, Wonkadu went before Anchorage Assembly members to ask for a grant to help him do that.
And we're requesting funding for repair, expansion, and upgrade of the food pantry.
At the time, the city of Anchorage had just received millions in ARPA funds. ARPA stands for the American Rescue Plan Act, which is intended to help communities recover from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. In May of 2021, the federal government awarded the city of Anchorage a total of $103 million. The U.S. Treasury Department sets guidelines for how that money is spent. Wonkadu soon applied for a grant. He submitted these documents requesting $750,000 so he could rebuild his food pantry on O'Malley Road.
There really aren't food pantry services available in South Anchorage.
So the Assembly approved the grant, which required Revive to raise an additional $750,000 in matching funds. But the $750,000 grant was never used to rebuild the barn in South Anchorage. Instead, it was torn down.
I was told they purchased a building in Midtown to provide their services that they had been awarded to for a South Anchorage project. That was the first time that I had real concern that something wasn't right.
Assembly Vice Chair Christopher Constant began wondering what happened to that money. Then last June, Wonkadu and his executive assistant, Carmen Wanis, addressed the Assembly.
My name is Prince Wonkadu. I live in South Anchorage.
This time they wanted more money.
And the amount we're requesting now is $1.6 million.
Wanis explained how Revive had already spent the first $750,000.
We decided to purchase a pre-existing building that is already equipped with a commercial kitchen. We have proceeded to purchase a property for $1.85 million with the help of the $750,000 we got from the ARPA first round.
At that point, Assembly member Forrest Dunbar began firing off questions.
I remember we took a tour of this facility that was off of O'Malley.
That's right.
And so my understanding is, and I think at the time you told us, well, this is where it's going to go.
Right.
And so what you're telling us now is that that's not where it's going.
The other existing structure was damaged beyond repair, according to engineers and people that inspected it. So that has since had to be torn down. We've since purchased property on Tudor and McInnes.
So the $750,000, is that going to go to anything on O'Malley? I mean, that was sort of the understanding when we appropriated that money.
Wonkadu replied.
The money that was appropriated was for either building or partly building or relocation. And we're applying it to relocation because right now the need is there for expansion.
Revive expanded by purchasing this large church on McInnes Street where Wonkadu presides over services.
We have church every Sunday, and we have Bible study on Wednesdays, and we have prayer meetings on Fridays.
Records show that 1 week after asking the Assembly for more funds, Wonkadu purchased the church through his LLC corporation, GF Heritage, for $1.85 million. That was news to the Assembly. After all, Wonkadu's ARPA application stated the funds would be used to rebuild the South Anchorage food pantry.
It certainly, as a member of the Assembly, raises concerns when funds are spent in a manner not authorized under law.
Alaska's news source obtained the grant agreement between Revive and the city of Anchorage. It was signed by Wonkadu and former municipal manager Amy Domboski. We found the contract differed from what the Assembly had approved. It now included an appendix allowing Revive the option to relocate the pantry. That's something the Assembly members say they never agreed to.
It wasn't authorized. It wasn't never discussed in any of the hearings, work sessions, committees. Never was there a discussion about, please buy us a new building.
Both Constant and Assembly Chair Suzanne LaFrance want to know how that new language ended up in the contract.
Certainly that was not part of what was approved by the Assembly. and I'm hopeful that we'll find out what happened.
And we found Assembly members aren't the only ones who have concerns.
I am aware of an investigation being done by the U.S. Department of Treasury.
I did have a discussion with an inspector from the Department of Treasury, the IRS.
Well, regarding?
The Revive Alaska organization. There is definitely interest in this transaction and what's happened and what's happening.
We wanted to learn more about Prince Wankadoo. Alaska's news source investigated his background and found he has a criminal history. In 2012, records show Wankadoo did prison time for a felony he committed back in 2007. According to the indictment, when Wankadoo was a mortgage broker in Texas, he submitted a fraudulent loan application for a $630,000 home loan. Investigators say Wankadoo profited over $71,000 in that transaction. He was charged with conspiracy to commit mail fraud and pled guilty. As a result, a judge ordered him to serve 20 months in federal prison and then be deported back to Nigeria. But in 2013, records show Wankadoo successfully appealed his deportation and was allowed to remain in the U.S.
We got a grant on this.
We requested an interview with Wankadoo, and his staff invited us to meet with him at their church on McKinnis Street.
We're going to be able to get that going. Pantry continues down here.
Wankadoo gave us a tour of the facility, showing us the kitchen and room that's used as a temporary food pantry. It's open on Wednesdays between 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. or by appointment.
If you're just hungry, show up, we'll serve you food.
When we questioned Wankadoo about his criminal history, he first denied doing anything intentionally wrong until after we showed him the documents.
I made the mistake, I allowed it to happen. It was under my nose, and I take full responsibility. But that's not who I am, and that's not what is affecting what I'm doing now.
We then asked Wankadoo why he applied federal funds towards the purchase of the church.
When you applied for the ARPA funds, you said that you wanted to fix the roof on the food pantry.
How? What does that mean?
That's what you said you wanted to do, is fix the roof.
The roof caved in. Right. So even when we applied, I went to the assembly and openly asked them for the money for the repair of the food pantry. Then went back and reported to them that the engineers are saying that there is no way that that food pantry will be repaired, that we needed more money to repair it.
But assembly members say Wankadoo only told them he tore down the South Anchorage food pantry and then purchased the church using some of the ARPA money after the fact. That's why they plan to investigate further.
The specific report that I will be requesting is a detailed list of transactions that $750,000 and the $750,000 in matching funds were spent on.
We have an update to an Alaska News Source investigation surrounding a local nonprofit organization under federal investigation. Early this month, we told you how the Anchorage Assembly had awarded $750,000 to Revive Alaska Community Services. That money was supposed to help the nonprofit repair a food pantry in South Anchorage, but at least some of it was used to buy a church in Midtown instead. Meanwhile, the South Anchorage food pantry was torn down. Our investigative team has been fighting to access public documents regarding Revive's activities. And investigative reporter Mike Mason says that has not been easy.
Yeah, Rebecca, it hasn't been, but it should be, because Revive is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. That means they're obligated by federal law to release certain financial records. And since they've also received federal pandemic relief money, those documents are subject to additional scrutiny. But so far, Revive and the city has been withholding many of them from us and the public as well.
Revive advertises that their food pantry in Midtown is open to the public every Wednesday between 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We stopped by on multiple occasions during that time to see how many people showed up. On 2 random occasions last November, we saw no one coming in or out. On the 3rd time, we saw 1 person leaving the church.
And the amount of people that they're feeding there, it would be great to get that information from the city if they're supposed to keep track, but it doesn't appear as though it's very many.
Stephen Manwiller has also been keeping track of Revive. He lives in Independence Park. The area Revive was proposing to place up to 10 repurposed Army barracks to house homeless seniors and veterans. Revive bought the barracks from the federal government, which is holding them at J-Bear until this spring. Last May, Revive applied for an ARPA grant to help with that project, claiming those 10 units could house up to 480 people.
And we asked about the 480 number, and they said that that was only used in order to solicit money. And once they said that, most of us realized that there's something wasn't right about this.
Public pressure eventually forced Revive to kill that project. Now the empty lot is back on the market. The next month, Revive purchased this 16,000 square foot church in Midtown, which sits on more than an acre of land. They did this after the Assembly appropriated $750,000 to help the nonprofit rebuild its food pantry in South Anchorage.
We're going to break this wall eventually and make it one big room.
When given a tour of the building, we found only a couple of rooms that appeared to be used as a food pantry.
So we get the food through the Food Bank of Alaska.
We found, without the Assembly's knowledge or approval, the city administration changed the language in the grant to allow Revive the option to relocate. Therefore, at least some of that money went towards this church in Midtown instead, which now serves as their temporary food pantry.
But does it really cost $750,000 for the small room that they have at the church?
As for Revive, the federal investigators may have better luck getting answers.
And it sounds as though that's been going on for several months now, because I've reached out to him since, and he says it's still ongoing.
On Monday, Revive sent us an email asking us to stay off their property. As for their financial documents, they told us their federal 990 forms are public record that we may access on our own. But we have not been able to find them, and they refuse to cooperate any further with our investigation. Also on Monday, the municipality of Anchorage sent us copies of 5 of Revive's quarterly reports. For the most part, they were left blank, except for one that reported Revive serves 45 households per week. Assembly Vice Chair Christopher Constant has called for an internal audit into all the city grants. He also wants to know why someone within city administration changed the language of Revive's grant, allowing them to relocate. The mayor's office said he doesn't get involved with grants, and the former municipal manager, Amy Demboski, was the last one to sign off on it. Demboski told us she wasn't aware of any changes that were made and only approved the grant after the city's legal department reviewed it for any discrepancies.
An update tonight to an Alaska news source investigation into a nonprofit group being investigated by federal authorities. We began asking questions after Revive Alaska used federal funds towards the purchase of a church in Midtown instead of using it to repair a food pantry in South Anchorage.
Now we're examining Revive's efforts to raise money for its nonprofit. Investigative reporter Mike Mason is here with more on that part of the story. Mike.
Yeah, guys. Revive has been holding fundraisers and making presentations to various groups, hoping to raise money to build a large food pantry in South Anchorage. Revive's website indicated they were supported by a wide array of corporate sponsors, even the Seattle Mariners. But when we began contacting those organizations, we found out it was a whole different ballgame.
The specific program we have for seniors and veterans.
Revive's president, Prince Wankadoo, purchased this land in Independence Park through his corporation, promising to place up to 10 of these military barracks on it as a way to provide housing for the homeless. Residents protested, and Revive eventually killed that project and is now selling the land. We found Wankadoo owes back taxes, and the bill is over $14,000. In a few weeks, the city's tax assessor plans to begin the foreclosure process. Wankadoo also purchased this church with money the Anchorage Assembly expected would be used to repair a food pantry in South Anchorage. Assembly members tell us that transaction is under federal investigation. Now the church is on the market as well, and we learned its religious tax exemption status is also being reviewed by the city. Meanwhile, Wankadoo has been raising money for Revive by holding fundraisers, like this one, held at the Anchorage Museum last November, and by holding presentations at local community councils to gain support.
Wankadoo listed his own church group as a corporate sponsor, so we didn't question that. We're told the Alaska Veterans Museum did make a one-time cash donation to Revive, but they're not considered corporate sponsors. The barbecue restaurant listed on Revive's site confirmed it is a sponsor and they do support their work. And despite our request, Revive has not provided any comment.